Today we'll be talking about 4 things that you need to be doing during the race to maximize your pace and F126 that you probably weren't doing back then with F125. Number 1, ERS modes. In this iteration of the F1 cars, you will have to manage your battery a lot more throughout a lap, as the battery can be drained and recharged multiple times throughout the lap depending your driving style. Being conservative in certain tracks is a lot more important. There are other tracks, for example Singapore, that the battery, I don't know if it's glitched out or just the nature of the track, that pretty much the battery becomes infinite. One big thing to understand is the power delivery. The 50% of the engine power comes off the battery. The different modes will depend how that battery gets deployed. Boost is probably the most rapid and the most instantaneous, so you have to be very careful when you use that. You never ever want to be using boost mode out of slow speed corners because you probably will most likely spin out. But to caveat all that, it all just depends on your skill level. If you're capable of accelerating out of corners with boost mode, go right ahead. You want to use boost mode once you've already planted the power down out of a slow speed corner. Majority of the time you either want to be on medium or none, depending on how good you are with your throttle control. Most corners, I've learned that none is going to be your easiest bet to be able to get on power quick, and after you've got it on power quick, you can put boost or medium. Another thing to understand is if you have pressed boost mode majority of the time on most straights, the battery will continue to deploy for a set amount of time and then it will start ramping down. So it's very, very key to understand when you want to use boost mode. Number 2, we're going to talk about the brake bias. Brake bias can be very important when it comes to the F126 cars due to just how the rear end feels under braking, due to the MGUK putting about 3 times more force when you come off throttle and into a braking zone. Now the brake bias has been shifted forward, but during the race you will have to move it depending where your tire wear, tire temp, and what type of corner you are going to be leading into. There's a few tracks like Spain and Texas where certain corners you will need to do it. Texas, most infamously on T1, has always been a difficult corner where the rear end would slide out. Well, with these cars, it's more prominent for the rear end to slide out. So by pushing the brake bias forward, it will definitely help you keep some stability. But understand, when you do move the bias forward, it's best to do a lot of your braking in a straight line, because if you try to turn with too much braking on the front tires could possibly lock and make it hard to turn in. So also with these cars, you don't want to be on the brake as long as you were with the 25s, so try to do most of your braking in a straight line, release a little bit sooner than you feels comfortable compared to the 25s, and then you should be okay. But this would come in with a lot of practice, a lot of understanding, but most of it has to go by feel and understand how the cars react. Number 3 is LICO, which means lifting and coasting. Lifting and coasting is very essential with the 2026 cars because half of the engine power comes from the battery. There's only a few ways for the engine to recharge because in the 2026 era they removed the MGUH, so now you cannot recharge with the turbo power. What you got to do is you got to lift and coast leading into a corner to allow your car to build kinetic energy through your drivetrain, which would allow the battery to recharge a bit. Also, when you go under braking, it uses the rear brakes to recharge the battery. Super clipping hasn't been integrated completely in the game like it is in real life, so it is not super effective to be super clipping. Sometimes on long straights, what you want to do is definitely not lift all the way, maybe about 50%, so your car doesn't drop too much speed and you don't lose too much energy. But this is where the ERS modes come into play, because if you're on none, you can recharge the most even while doing 50%. Medium, it's obviously going to be a little more moderate of a recharge, but if you're on hot lap or boost, it makes it a lot harder to recharge when you do that 50% throttle on those long straights. Just be mindful that you do need to manage the battery and you do need to take advantage of the lifting and coasting, which will be beneficial sometimes entering into a corner, because a little bit of the lifting and coasting did slows you down a bit, so you don't have to stay on the brakes as long in leading into a corner. Number 4 is going to be your on throttle differential. As you go along racing, being in someone's dirty or chasing people down, pushing lap after lap after lap, you might need to change your differential ratio as your tires wear out. The 2026 cars have smaller tires, which are more prone to overheating and wearing out as a race length progresses. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to open your diff, especially on a lot of the corner types. Spain is a great example because it has many corners, but it does have a couple places where you want to have the most amount of traction and most amount of straight line speed. Being at 100% gives you great traction, gives you great straight line speed, and I would highly recommend using it in a corner that's not as slow and as much of a turn, maybe a high speed turn. You could kind of get around it and get it so you could get best straight line speed and straight traction to try to catch somebody. And once you slow down, you're going into into a corner and you need that more rotation just because your wheels are starting to overheat or wear out, I would definitely tune down the differential a little bit and get yourself going in that manner. When your differential's open, it allows you to rotate the car a little more easily because it allows the wheels to spin at a different rate. The differentials are completely at 100, they're locked in, and pretty much the wheels are rotating at the same speed. And that is why you will have a higher rotation. It is highly recommended to start with 100%, and when your tires are fresh, probably keep it 100% to maximize your lap times. But as the race progresses and as your tires wear and as they get hot, I would highly recommend, especially if you start chasing somebody, to turn the differential down a little bit to maximize your racing potential and keep yourself competitive. Thank you for stopping by, and if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, a comment, and let me know what you would like me to cover next. Thank you, and have a great one.